In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the midnight hour, and it is a new year. So we are opening with a new subject matter tonight, and that is Andrew's family jewel. Not jewels, but jewel. We want to make sure we're clear on that. And tonight, I have as my co-host, Sarah Medley.
Hello.
And Andrew Brooks.
Hello.
If I didn't embarrass you a little bit, you wouldn't feel welcome. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about a very interesting subject, and this is part of our haunted and attached objects, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in the series. We're going to cover things like Annabelle and Robert the Doll and Hope Diamond and so forth, but tonight we have one that hits home, and I think this is a very interesting subject. I wanted to do this for like 2 years, and I finally got Andrew in here. We can do this. Andrew, you had a very special stone that came into your family when you were about 10 years old, right?
Correct.
Okay. Tell me about how this stone came about.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. First of all, where the story came from is I needed Chief's help on how to dispose of it, and I should know better than to ask him because he would put me on this podcast to talk about this.
Well, I tell you, it's just too much opportunity. But no, I remember the day you called because I thought, you said, just out of curiosity, you wouldn't be interested in a cursed stone, would you? I go, what? And it was just out of the blue. You were at your recently deceased sister's house. She had passed away, unfortunately, and you were going through and doing the tidying up and all those things that need to be done to take care of family after they pass. And so tell me the history of this stone. Yes. Well, first, before we do that, tell me what the stone looked like as best you can.
Okay. So if you can imagine the stone, it was a red, I want to say it was a red rock, not a geologist, but a red rock stone that had a face carved in it.
Sure.
It was the size, it was a ring stone. So it was fairly small. It's designed to go on a ring.
Okay.
It had ram horns and a pointed beard, and arguably, however you want to say it, had a demonic face on it. Okay. I've tried to pull up pictures on the internet, found some metal ones that perhaps come close, but no, it definitely had it was not natural. It was a hand-carved stone to have a demonic appearance.
Yeah, and some of the things we came up with were kind of the European nature of a devil's face. Had the kind of goatee and the ram horns, and something Sarah brought up, which is really a good point to take. In fact, artificiers of metals are a little different. Metals are easier to work. They're easier to make carvings, intricate carvings. This was in a stone. And I mean, that takes a lot of artist skill. And back in the time, what date would you put this at? You were 10. So
I was probably about 10 when it came into the family. Here, I can give you the background.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My mother growing up was into the paranormal a little bit. Mm-hmm. My dad, with a coworker, he mentioned it to them that she's interested in the paranormal. He said that he had a stone that he would like to get rid of. My dad asked a few more questions about it. My dad's a natural skeptic of this. He never believed in any of this. He thought his coworker was trying to swindle him, especially when the coworker says that I need to sell it for silver. Mm-hmm. Well, my dad was a coin collector, and he had a silver dollar. So he offered, okay, I'll give you a silver dollar for it.
Okay.
the guy took it in a moment. He was happy to get rid of it.
Yeah, that ought to be your first big flag. If someone sells you a Rolls Royce for $5, I begin to worry at that point.
I would agree. And perhaps that was, in hindsight, something that probably, but he said that he had a lot of bad things that were happening to him and he wanted to get rid of it. And so when he was offered the chance to sell it for $1, he took it.
Well, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Yeah. And it was something to get, and he probably didn't worry too much about it at the time. So
no, because my dad was a skeptic. He didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Before we move on, the one thing I can think of here, the clarity as to why he wanted it paid in silver. Do you have any opinions? I have one, but go ahead.
I do not have a strong opinion other than it goes back to a lot of folklore that clearly he had some history on it but I don't have a history about
There's, and again, this, like you said, it goes back to folklore. And if you want to throw anything in here, feel free. There are a collection of 7 blades. I believe they're called Merlin blades. They were used to trap a witch. You could trap a lichen. There were several things they were used for. Also, of course, a silver bullet. And I got to tell you this is the joke part of the broadcast. You can buy silver bullets at Walmart. I'm just saying. Somehow the irony there all fits. They come in 3 calibers. And I had a hard time with this. My wife goes, I don't get why I go, it's Walmart. You realize they're selling silver bullets at Walmart. I'm just saying. Anyway, moving on. The one thing that comes to my mind, first of all, is the 30 pieces of silver. That's another thing. Now, it could be, the thought of, hey, the silver breaks the bond. They always said that was where the silver bullet legend came from, was the fact that was the payment to Judas. So a thought, I'm just throwing it out there. That's all, guys. That's the only thing I'm doing on that. And the reason why is for many, many years on Easter, the Scottish Rite Cathedral held a reenactment of the crucifixion. And I knew Christ. I drank with him. He was a good guy. But anyway, I played in the Lord's Supper, and I always played Judas because nobody wanted it. I didn't care. And, I remember the first time I did it, one of the gentlemen told me there, Ricky, I go, which character am I? He says, I'll give you a hint. You got a bag of coins. Off. And then that just became me the rest of the time. Drove my mother nuts. She hated it. But, to me, I didn't care. I did care one time when one of the makeup people glued a mustache over mine. And 3.5 hours later, I got all that gum ether out of my mustache. I wasn't happy. But anyway, but what I'm saying is, though, that may be what that relates to. So,
could be.
Yeah, just a thought. So your dad buys this from this coworker, and he gives him a silver dollar for it. And then what does he do with it?
My dad brings it home. It becomes a great conversation piece for a few years. My mother was in a paranormal club, and supposedly she took it and
show and tell. Yeah.
Show and tell, but had it exercised out. And, over the years, it ends up in a drawer. The conversation piece ends up in a drawer. About 20 years later, my mom is in the final stages of dying of a rare disease. And a sister of hers asked her if she still has the stone. And for something that she hadn't thought of in years, she said, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. So it makes you kind of wonder, was this rare disease related to the stone? But in any regard.
So it came after after your family had gotten the stone.
Yes.
Okay.
It lasted many years.
And this was your sister?
This was my mom.
Mom, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this was my mom.
Okay.
If you ever look into it, it's hypereosinophilia syndrome, which basically you become allergic to yourself.
Yeah. I have a friend that actually had that, believe it or not. She's not a friend now. She divorced my cousin. But anyway, yeah, she went through that. Her body basically can't stand itself. It fights against everything and anything.
But so she passed away, and somehow the stone ended up with my sister number 2. Okay. My sister number 2, say for another 20 years, she suffered with drug addiction and mental illness until she passed away. And that was where my sister...
And she had possession of the stone at the time.
She had possession of the stone. And so my sister number 1 and myself had to go clean out her house because she
Okay.
was unmarried, had no kids.
How old was she? Do you know, remember?
She would have been about 50.
Okay.
And honestly, she probably would have been pretty close to the same age my mom was when she passed away.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I never. Yeah. Didn't mean to bring that analogy through, but yeah.
Interesting you bring that up.
Yeah.
I have to investigate.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I wondered how old your mother was when she passed and how old she was. I was just curious there. I'm sorry.
They were both in their early 50s.
Okay.
But my sister passed away of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
A female type cancer, and for someone who, had no relations, had no kids, it's a little bit of a weird situation
Well, sure.
that she died of cancer. But we cleaned out the house, and I remember going to the house just wondering if that stone still existed. My sister had been evicted and moved out of home, so she kind of took just a few valuable things but strangely enough, she kept the stone with her. So
Now, that brings a lot to bear because if she left and felt it was that important, either the stone, again, I'm spitballing here, either the stone had an effect on her that said, hey, you need to take me with you, or she felt it was worth something, monetarily.
I don't think she ever thought it was monetary. Now, she did, of all her deficiencies, she did have a good conscience. And I believe that if she thought it was something bad, she would not have left it for someone else to inherit it.
Well, yeah, she wouldn't have endangered another person.
And
Most people wouldn't do that.
And there is still the story of the silver that goes back to it. If
Yeah.
you leave it behind or give it to somebody else, but you don't exchange it for silver.
You don't break the curse.
Yeah. So, and if you don't have the stone, you have no way of ever breaking the curse.
And before this whole series is over with of our, haunted objects and attached objects, I'll do some research or put Jennifer's, ask her to do some research on the silver to see what we can find out, just out of curiosity. Okay. So maybe we'll do a follow-up episode. It might be good. Okay, so you're cleaning out the house and you run across it.
Yes, there's a few strange things that I'll comment on this. My sister number 2 was a devout atheist. When we found the stone, it was in a box with actually a very ornate cross on the wooden box. Okay. Not something you would normally expect an atheist to have.
Well, a buddy of mine that was a Catholic priest, I thought a lot of him. He always said, atheists are atheists, but they get near death, he says. Guess who they call on? That just popped in my mind when you were saying that. But it's true. I mean, a lot of them suddenly get very religious, but, it does say, this is important to me. This is something that, obviously, and I felt the need to put it in a box of a religion I don't believe in on the exterior. Maybe deep down I did, but not in the exterior,
Well, and the two things is, first of all, my sister number 1 and I never saw the box before. So my sister...
Definitely something she had then.
She acquired
Yes.
afterwards. Okay, the other thing that is interesting is, my sister number 1 is a skeptic. Kind of I always thought she was a skeptic like my dad. I was a little marveled when I found the stone, and I'm like, would you like to look at it? He's like, no, I'm fine. I have no... And I said, do you want to touch it? Do you want to hold it? You got to see this. She refused to look at it.
Now she's religious in some fact, right? Not atheist.
Yeah, she's not atheist, but she...
Didn't want any part of that.
She had no interest in looking at it.
For someone that doesn't believe... This is the thing that always got me. And, I always... And by the way, I use your phrase and a lot. I always tell everybody, I said, it's nothing wrong with being subjective or being skeptical. I said, my chief of staff is very skeptical. He goes off of a phrase that I'm looking for the blinding light of the obvious. And I mean, most people are, but for someone who didn't believe in it but doesn't want to look at it.
Yes, I thought that was very curious. And,
Not taking any chances this week, yeah.
Well, and speaking of not taking any chances, this is where it becomes kind of curious. What do you do with a stone like this? My sister,
exactly.
My sister number 2 lived in Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm obviously in Indiana. My other sister is in Ohio. We're cleaning out our house. Our choices are we leave the stone behind, we put it in the car and bring it with us, we throw it in the trash. None of those are really good choices, and that is actually where I called chief. But the funny thing is both my sister number one and I refused to put it in the car with us.
And I'm glad you did. I'll be honest with you. You know, when you called me, I don't remember what was happening that day, but I remember you calling me and you said, "Hey, do you want to own a cursed stone?" And I thought, "I'm sorry, come again." You know, I mean, those aren't usually calls I get. And when you told me the history of it, I was more worried about the attachment that you had found it now being on you. And I remember we talked about, you know, I didn't have the facilities at the time to house something that I could contain. You know, when you start dealing with relics, and me and my wife have had this conversation now with the bigger area and we have the crypt, we could probably control some very minor relics. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want Annabelle here, but I mean, you know, otherwise, I mean, small items we could control. And there's a lot of there's a multitude of unanswered questions to what the stone could have been, what kind of ring it was in, was it part of a demonic service? There's just all kinds of things, but we could have probably contained it, but at the time we couldn't. And my biggest concern was your safety. I did not want you coming, you know, and you weren't going to leave with it anyway in your car, nor your sister, but, you know, we need to break the link because I felt like at that point you had gotten the link because you were the one that picked it up. You're the one that got it. You knew about it, so it would automatically transfer to you by death. And one of the things we said is bury it in the backyard, cover it in salt. Salt through the years has been the one purification item. And if I don't care which museum, haunted museum you go to, most items are encased with a salt ring or something along those lines. And, you know, I think that's pretty common. We used to tell people that would call us that said, "Hey, we have a Ouija board." We'd tell them to get a cheap towel from the dollar store, coat it in salt, wrap it up in the Ouija board, and it would kill the power. And that's kind of where that went. So you followed those instructions.
Correct. What we did is she lived on a kind of a wooded back area.
Yeah.
And we went back in the woods and buried it behind the property and doused it in salt. Now, I did not take a picture of it because I didn't want to give any credit to
Sure, and it could have carried it on in image. I mean, I'm not going to say that it can't happen because I don't know, you know.
Yeah, and this goes to, do I actually believe it? I don't know. This is something, it sounds good on a podcast, but it goes over 40 years.
Yeah.
Did my mom die? You know, did my mom die of a rare disease? Did my sister's mental illness? Does it tie back to the stone, or does it just tie back to science and health issues? I don't know. I honestly don't have a good answer on that.
Could be coincidence. You know, there was a show, and of course I relate because I watch a lot of TV, probably more than I need to. There was a series called Evil, and I enjoyed it. I've always been very fascinated with Catholicism. I don't agree with it very often. I've never been a Catholic if I studied or approved in any way. I did go through seminary. And a lot of people know that, which they find odd that I didn't go on into religious studies beyond that point. But one of the things about this movie was, and I'll tell you, it was kind of funny because they had a relic they ran across. And it showed that the upper Catholicism or the upper Catholic Vatican did not want to fly with this. So they actually talked the people in that found it to flying it to them. And they found out later that the only reason they did that was the priests were scared to fly with it and they set them up. It turned out the relic was fake, but had it been real, you know, they were sacrificial lambs on the aircraft. And I don't want anybody to be that way. Now, I'll tell you a funny story. My father, when growing up, you know, I don't think he'd ever admit openly to being superstitious. My dad was an auto worker. Before that, he was a baker. He served in the United States Navy, and he served as a commissary store keep, and he did a lot of baking. He went to work for West Baking Company, which doesn't exist anymore, and he had a really good job. And a friend of his came to him and said, "Hey, we need to move over to Ford. This is going to go out." He said, Dad said, "No, this will never go out." But he went over to see what they had to say, and Ford paid a little more, so they made a job change. And so anyway, you know, long story short, they worked at Ford Dad worked there for almost 30 some years. And, but, you know, the funny thing was when my brother died, he didn't make 2 years old. I think he made right at 2. Dad had somehow or another thought that having the silver dollars in the house. He'd been given a silver dollar right before my brother Jackie died, and he believed that had something to do with it. And he would never allow silver dollars in the house, although he collected them, and he had them at at a lockbox. When my father got ready to pass, he gave me the key. He didn't want Mom to know a lot of things, and he told me, he said, I've got this lockbox. I thought, oh, God, was he attached with the mafia? Was a lot of this tainted? I mean, where am I going to get into? And I opened it up, and geez, oh, Pete, there must have been $100 in silver dollars in there. And Liberty, all kinds of different ones. Some worth money. There was silver notes. It looked like $20 bills. Some stamped Hawaii and everything from World War II. He had collected money, but wouldn't allow it in the house because he thought there was something there that evolved my brother's death. My brother died of pneumonia. He was at a time where 2-year-olds couldn't. I mean, nowadays it wouldn't have been nothing. It had been saved and nothing flat, but that's just not how it worked out. So, call it superstitious, call it whatever you want, but there's a lot of people that just, they're funny about things. If you go to Louisiana and you get down a lot of the bayous and you start talking to people, everyone carries a silver dollar. And it's to ward off the loup-garou. I mean, they all have superstitions. You go to any casino, you'll see a little blue-haired woman with about 6 rabbit's feet, playing the slot machine. Lucky for her. The rabbit, wasn't very lucky for him. But anyway, what I'm getting at is everybody looks at things differently. Was the stone possibly cursed? There's a good chance of it. Certainly being shaped like the devil's face, that didn't help it any. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it didn't. I mean, but it makes one wonder, where did this come from? Where did the guy get it from? If it had been dislodged from a ring, was it part of there's a lot of satanic worships. Matter of fact, who was it? Was it Eric at the last time had brought up something about the fact there was something on the news and they canceled a satanic service due to the weather, and you'd think the devil would work that out.
Yeah, it was Santa, but they spelled it.
It's Satan. That's right. Yeah, there's a neat movie with Jack Black about dear Satan. I mean, oh my God. But yeah, you wonder, during snow, do they cancel demonic services? I'm just wondering. Anyway, asking for a friend. But having that in your family, I mean, when you called me, I gave you those instructions. I was really worried till you got home. I never told you that, but I was concerned. The problem is, and I hate to say that parapsychology is a pseudo type of science, but a lot because that's the thing that everyone likes to pin on us. But the problem is there's a lot of things we don't know. I mean, there's a horrible amount of things we don't know. Medical science, earth sciences, they're all much further down the road than we are. We're all still dealing with theorems and, and possible laws and possible theories, and we really don't know. So possibly, I'm hoping, because obviously you're doing okay. I mean, you've got the usual problems that we all have. You have parents that are aging and are not in the best of shape. You have kids that have issues and back and forth. But I mean, for the most part, you're doing well. Yeah. So, hopefully the salt was all it took to break it. A
couple things, a couple things about it, and I reference my sister number one only because my perception is that she's always kind of a cynic to this.
Yeah,
but I don't think that she was on board 100%. But at the same time, she kind of took the same adage that I did in the back of my mind:
don't take chances. Yeah.
What it's
if you're on top, why rock the boat?
Right. And I think that is one of there's a human psychology aspect to this.
Sure.
About, do I think it was haunted? Possessed? I honestly don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what good does it do to prove it by creating a lot of bad things in my life?
Yeah. I mean, you're ruining your career or your life or your relationships to prove a point. Is it worth it? No. Heavens no. I mean, one of the things that I think I and the father that I was good friends with used to debate was whether or not, about demons walking the earth and things. It makes you wonder a wee bit.
I'll finish this with the cute story of finishing it up is that after we decided we were going to bury it with salt, my sister and I went to Home Depot.
Yeah.
I told her I was determined that when the greeter greeted me at the door, I was going to ask her where the dark arts section was.
Gotta have some fun with it. I mean, life's short. You might as well.
Speaking of fun, I gotta know, what kind of salt did you use? Is there a specific kind? Do we do table salt, sea salt?
I never specify.
Yeah, I need to know.
Strangely,
Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
strangely in Lawrenceville, Georgia, I think it was Lawrenceville, there's not a lot of options, and even the Home Depot doesn't really sell salt unless I wanted to get the salt for the
Like
water
water
softener.
softener salt.
So I
See?
ended up going to the Dollar General store for that.
Okay, yeah.
Got table salt.
Just had to know what kind of salt
Walk
we were
in, look at
using.
the Walmart greeter and go, look, it's like this. I need a blanket. I need some steaks like it go through a heart. And I need some salt. Other than that, hey, we're good. Can you direct me to those aisles, please? Yeah.
That was actually one other thing that I got gloves, so I didn't have to touch it.
Yeah.
And then I buried the gloves with it under the salt.
Well, that's a good thing. That's something I didn't tell you, and that was a good thought, a good way to do it. I mean, obviously you turned out okay. And so
I feel like we need to knock on wood just in case. This is a little bit much.
Well, we've had several times where we've been offered things that we know that have been haunted and we didn't get a chance to get them. And the thought always come to me, and I haven't discussed this with Heather, so she'll love this. But yeah, my thought is, if we get a chance, it's something we control, I wouldn't mind having it. I have a piece of concrete that came from 9/11. It sits here, and people ask me if it's a relic. I don't see it that way. I picked it up while I was there. There was a lot of things. It doesn't contain human waste or anything like it. It's just a piece of concrete from the buildings and or whatever you want to call it, building material. And, for me, it was a memory. That's all there is to it. I don't see it as anything else. I have some other things. One thing I collected on Hurricane Isabel that stays here. Neither one do I feel are relics. For that matter of fact, I got a small alligator head. It isn't a relic either. But anyway, I'm always asked. A buddy of mine has a voodoo doll that he supposedly bought. And he bought it in the middle of Louisiana at a voodoo shop. And I always tell him, he says, do you think it's real? I go, no, I'm pretty sure it isn't. If you bought it at a voodoo shop, there's a good chance there's probably 600 of them in the back, and somewhere there's a tag that says made in China. And, you got to get into that. I mean, it's like the guys when I was in Mexico used to sell me the Cuban cigars on the dock. I knew damn well they weren't Cuban, but I mean, we played that game. But all in all, I think this was probably something that was very real. The thing is, I guess the way we're going to end this episode is if you live in Georgia and you're out and you're metal detecting, which you shouldn't pick up. But anyway, if somehow or another you run across a stone that's covered in salt,
don't return it.
Yeah, don't return
I
it.
don't want it back.
It's not
Put it
ours.
back. Yeah. Don't send it to our address. Just bury it back in the ground, say a little prayer and walk away. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have tonight. Good night, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, folks, it's time for the ghost story of the day with Heather Lawson.
All right, this comes from Hoosier Folk Legends by Ronald L. Baker. Grave robbers, awakened woman, buried alive. Well, anyway, years ago, they didn't embalm people, My girlfriend told me what had happened to her great-grandma. It's supposed to be true, and it is true. Her great-grandmother had a diamond ring that was supposed to have been worth a lot of money. A couple of men had tried to buy it from her husband, but he wouldn't sell it. Anyway, her grandma died, and they buried her. Her husband had her buried with the diamond ring on her finger. The same night, these same men decided, to steal the ring. So they dug her up to take the ring, and it was real dark, and they were in a real big hurry. They had trouble getting the ring off her finger, so they decided to cut the ring off her finger. While they were cutting, they hit a nerve in her finger. Her grandmother rose up and scared the two men half to death, and they run off. Her grandmother had been paralyzed, it seems. She could hear things, but couldn't say anything or move her body. It was as if she was dead, but she wasn't. She was aware of where she was at and was terrified. So she walked home after she gathered up her senses. My girlfriend's mother was only a very little girl at the time, but she could still remember her grandmother knocking on the door. Everyone was terrified and screaming because they thought she was dead. So they let her in, and everything was all right. She lived several years afterwards.
Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd., all rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.